Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Shane Flynn Outdoors. Hey, I thought I'd take the time to put out a how-to video, and this how-to video is how to fish the spinnerbait in the spring. I've got a lot of questions, not a lot, but quite a few questions from people on Facebook. A couple reached out to me directly and said, hey, I go out fishing a spinnerbait and I don't catch anything. How do you catch so many fish on a spinnerbait? And spring is a great time of year to fish the spinnerbait. I can tell you this is mid-March, just over mid-March, and I've caught probably 60 to 80 bass already this spring on a spinnerbait. Several over the 5 pounds into the 7 pound mark. So in the spring, this catches a lot of bass, and it catches big bass. But there are a lot of things you have to consider when you fish the spinnerbait. Where you fish the spinnerbait, when you fish the spinnerbait, what type of spinnerbait to fish, and the equipment that you have. It all makes a difference when it comes to spring spinnerbait fishing. I will tell you, there's everybody has their own preference on colors and blades and things of that, but I'll give you my opinion, and you can follow my channel. You'll see next week I'll catch a whole bunch of fish on a spinnerbait next week's episode, and the following week probably, and some real big ones as well. But the watercolor makes a difference on what you choose for a spinnerbait color, the color of the blades, the type of blades, etc. So today I'm out on Mooney Lake, and I just came out here for a few hours. It's not a great day to fish, high pressure, wind's blowing from the east. So when the wind blows from the east, the fish bite the least, is the old saying. Not necessarily true in the summer, and the water temperature is 54 degrees, really good spinnerbait water temperature this time of year. Now that's another thing I should talk about. What water temperature do you fish a spinnerbait? I start fishing a spinnerbait at 45 to 47 degrees. Now I'm fishing it slow, but I'm fishing a spinnerbait, especially in the spring. And the spinnerbait bite does real good right up until the spawn when the bass are on the beds. Once those bass get on the bed and you see them on the beds, you can buzz a spinnerbait bomb, and 99% of the time, they're just gonna watch it go by them. Once they get on the beds, the spinnerbait bite is over. And there's a quick few weeks during the post-spawn that the spinnerbait's okay, but once summer sets in, it's a different story. You're going to plastics and slower baits and more fishy type baits and things of that nature. So spring is a prime time to catch bass on a spinnerbait. So is fall, but we'll focus on this. In this edition, we'll focus on the spring. So I already talked about water temperature. When it gets into the mid to high 40s and up until this, the low 60s, that's when I'm going to throw the spinnerbait. What am I going to throw? It depends on the water clarity. Here at Mooney Lake, I can see down about 6.5 feet, so it's real clear. You're asking, how do I know that? I put the my spinnerbait down the water and measure it, with my pole. So I'm good at seeing it at 6 to 6.5 foot. Now, I really like white chartreuse or light chartreuse colors for the spinnerbait in the spring. If you have murky water and clear water, if you have murky water, you should probably think about orange, reds, real bright colors, and even painted blades. If you have real like chocolate milk colored water or real dirty water, or if you're in a river system, you want to get something very bright. But in a clear lake, this is a primary color, white with a light chartreuse with a white trailer or a chartreuse trailer. Sometimes I mix it up. And the trailer that I prefer is a curly tail grub. I like the Mr. Twister brand, that's my preference. And then in the blades, I change it up. Today I'm fishing a double Colorado. What I will tell you, and you can see these are the Colorado blades. I'll get up a little bit closer. Those are Colorado blades. One big silver blade, one big gold blade. The secondary blade's big. I like big blades on my spinnerbaits. It makes a difference, right? And the reason I went with the Colorado blade today is the bite's not going to be that great. This, if it's kind of an off day, but I can slow this down and fish this at 7 to 8 feet. I can get this spinnerbait down to 7 to 8 feet and keep the blades turning with these big Colorado blades. And I will tell you, a lot of people say, I don't catch a lot of fish in the spring on a spinnerbait. Slow down. That's the key. You got to slow roll a spinnerbait in the spring. So for the last few weeks, I've been having my boat set in 15 foot of water. Right now I'm at 18 feet of water, and the bank is just right there. I keep my boat in between 13 and 17 feet of water. I throw towards the bank, and of course, I fish it a little fast when it comes off the bank because you got the angle of the bank. And as the spinnerbait comes towards the boat, I slow it down. And I just kind of keep that spinnerbait down 4-6 feet all the way up to the boat. I usually get the bite this time of year with the water temperature at 55, 54 degrees. As soon as that bait gets down to about 4 to 6 feet is when, right about that 4 or 6 foot mark, or depending, in that 8 foot mark is where I'll get the slam on the spinnerbait. So you can throw it towards the bank. You don't have to throw it right against the bank this time of year, but throw it towards the bank, slow roll it back to you towards the boat. And I'll give you an example. Let's just do this real quick. I'll turn the boat here real quick towards the bank. All right, so the bank is right here. I'm going to make sure that you can see the bank. And I throw the spinnerbait up to the bank. And I want to make sure the blades are turning as soon as it hits the water. And I fish it a little bit fast, and then as it starts getting down deeper and deep, the depth of the bank goes, I slow down the spinnerbait. And you can see I'm very methodically slow with the blade, with turning the handles, and I'm feeling that blade bounce. You can feel your pole, you should be able to feel the turning of the blades. If you look, you can't see, but that spinnerbait's down about 6 foot when it came towards the boat. So you want to get it up there close, and then kind of fast. As soon as you're throwing in 2 or 3 foot of water, you don't want to hang it up, and then you slow roll it towards the boat. And then I'll give it a little pump every once in a while when I slow down. Just not a lot, just kind of little pumps now and again, all the way back to the boat, slow rolling. And the double Colorado blade will get down there deep. Now what I've been using most of the spring is a willow Colorado blade combination, which I'll show you in just a minute. And that works out good. And you don't have to, it'll get deep, but not as deep as the double Colorado. This double Colorado makes a good thumping sound. It's a loud thump. That's the attractant of the bass with the spinnerbait. You get 3 important things with the spinnerbait in the spring that draws the bite. You get the vibration, you get the flash, and you get the action of a minnow bait, right? You get the action from the bait. You get that from the actual where the hook's at. So you get 3 factors that are going to attract fish this time of year. And let's face it, the bass are hungry. They're going to jump on anything that looks like a quick meal that'll fill their belly up. Especially the big ones, the 10 inchers to the 10 pounders you're going to catch on a spinnerbait in the spring. So that's kind of the basics of how to fish the spinnerbait. A couple other things that I would tell you, and I'm just going to get off the bank here, that's really important is where do I start fishing this spinnerbait? I'll tell you this, and a lot of people are going to go, man, that makes it tough, Shane. But the wind is a key factor when you're fishing a spinnerbait. I always go to the bank that the wind is blowing to. As you can see, we have ripples on the lake, and I'm going to start here. You need wind on the water to most effectively fish the spinnerbait. You don't have to, but you're going to be you're going to be highly more effective with a little bit of ripple on the water and the wind. The spinnerbait is, you need something above when it's smooth glass water. It doesn't break up the silhouette, and the bass doesn't seem to jump on it as well in calm water. Now they will, don't get me wrong, from time to time when you're fishing a spinnerbait, it's not a matter of the wind, it's a matter if you're getting at the right spot or not. But in the spring, the windy banks, and you want to start fishing windy banks, and you can see them coming up on a little cove here. Probably won't catch anything in here, but I'll try. And you want to start fishing the windy banks, the little coves. If you know where an area that bass are going to spawn in, I would start up those banks and go towards the area they spawn in from deep water. What I like to look for in a lake is the coves that cut in deep but have deep water associated with them. So like right now, I'm off this point and I'm 25, 30 feet away from the bank, and I'm setting the point of the boats in 20 feet of water. So this cove right here has some depth to it. So bass can, cycle in and out when they're feeding from shallow to deep water, but when it comes to time to spawn, they've got some good gravelly bank here with some sticks around, some stick ups that they can spawn around. And that's what I kind of focus on in the area, especially in reservoirs, and I fish primarily reservoirs in Virginia. Those are the things I look for when I start fishing the spinnerbait. So start on the windy banks. When I say windy, the banks that the wind is blowing to. This is a west bank right now because the wind is blowing from the east. So I'm fishing on a west bank. The other thing to think about is when you're retrieving your spinnerbait, if you can't see them now, there's a lot of sticks and stick-ups around the bank here. I try to hit every stick I can with my spinnerbait. Bounce it off sticks. The one thing the difference between fishing a spinnerbait and a chatterbait, I think a spinnerbait, the wobble and the blades keep it from actually hooking on stick-ups and sticks and stuff. So obviously it's not snagless, right? It's got an open hook. But the blades help you fight off the sticks from getting hung up on them. So I like to bounce them off the sticks. If it's a dock, I bounce it off the dock. If it's a pole in the water, I run the spinnerbait right next to it and hit it. Maybe give it a little pump when it comes off. You'd be shocked how many times you get a bass bite after it bounces off a stick or a log or a pole or a ladder on a boat dock. That is one technique that I would tell you, don't shy away from throwing right in the middle of the sticks. Doesn't work every time, but I will tell you more often than not, I'll drag it through a pile of sticks when the bass are really biting, bounce it through those sticks, and as soon as it comes through the other side, the bass are jumping on it. And that really it actually holds true for a lot of vibration baits. It holds true for a chatterbait as well. So like right here, I'm just throwing up on these sticks and I'm gonna go right through the middle of those sticks. I'm not gonna go around them. And I feel that stick and I just came right through it, right? Didn't really get a hard thump off a stick. And with practice and time, you'll learn the difference between bouncing the spinnerbait off a stick or a rock or a log versus when a bass hits it. And that kind of leads me into the next thing, is the feel of fishing a spinnerbait. It's really important, I think, if you're going to be successful during the spring fishing a spinnerbait, is having the equipment that you can feel the spinnerbait actually turning. And when I say turning, the blades turning. This is a Halo Black Widow 7'2" medium heavy action rod. It's very, very sensitive. And I can feel the blades turning from the pole. And I can feel them down here in my handle. Where I keep my hand, I can feel the vibration. And what I've learned to use as an indicator when I get a bite is when the blades get interrupted, I know it's a fish. I'll feel the blades kind of get a bump and I'm setting the hook. And that's 9 times out of 10 that's a bass, or I just caught a stump, right? Because you're... Oh, this is a big bass, big folks. Big bass. Whoa! Right, so you're gonna catch some sticks, right? I mean, any pro angler, weekend angler, or whatever, you're gonna catch a stick or two. That's just part of the game when it comes to fishing. But 9 times out of 10, I know when I got a bite. Maybe even a little better than 9 times out of 10. But you'll feel the interruption of the blades from them spinning, and you'll know that it's a fish, and you can set the hook. So having the right equipment, and some people like their spinnerbait rod to be very stiff. Some like it, some people like a heavy action rod. Some people like a medium action rod. Medium heavy is kind of in the middle. That's what I've always fished. And for me, it's the feel. It doesn't matter how much the rod costs. It doesn't matter if it's the prettiest or the ugliest rod. If I can feel the spinnerbait, that's the one I like. And I just happened to buy this halo rod last year, and I've really grown attached to it, and it's been a good rod, especially with the spinnerbait. I've caught a lot of fish on it this spring. What pound test line? Let me throw that out there. I fish. What I have on here now is the Daiwa Samurai fluorocarbon 16-pound test line. I would tell you 16 to 20 is, here in Virginia, in the reservoirs, is plenty. If you were down in Florida, or if you're fishing heavy vegetation, you probably want to fish heavier line, or you want to fish a braided line. I'm not a fan of braided line. I'll just throw that out right now. I fish primarily nothing but fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon or copolymer line. That's kind of a preference. But when you're only fishing light sticks, things of that nature, fluorocarbon works just fine in the 15 to 20 pound test range. You can get away with 12 to 14 if you want. I will tell you though, when you hook a big bass, you need your drag set correctly, because when you hook a big bass with the spinnerbait, they are going the opposite way that you're reeling 9 times out of 10. And you got to be ready for them. And I'll try to clip in a couple of little spots where I caught some pretty good bass here lately in this video at the end, where you can see what I mean. So I keep my drag set. If you take your drag, and I can pull it pretty easily out like that. So my drag is set, I would say, if I catch a 4-pounder or better, it'll set my drag off. Anything less than that, I'm going to just going to be a solid hook set and be okay. But 4 pounds or better, when I set the hook and they run the opposite way, my drag will sing a little bit. The last thing I would throw out on what spinnerbait, before I take some out and start doing a little show and tell, is size. In the springtime, I fish a 1/2 ounce size. So this is a total of a 1/2 ounce. And primarily because I want it to go deep. I'm going to fish it slow. I'm not trying to speed it around. So I want that 1/2 ounce size to get down there deep when I'm fishing. So 1/2 ounce in the spring is what I fish. In the summer and fall, I'm going to fish a 3/8 ounce, a little bit lighter, because typically I'm trying to keep it above weed lines and things of that nature, which I rarely use the spinnerbait in the summer, but when I do, that's what I'm doing. I'm buzzing it above the weeds or the moss line. So you want something a little lighter. 1/2 ounce is my preference. You can go bigger, you can go smaller, but the key is how deep you want to get that spinnerbait down. You can see, well, maybe you can't see the depth here, but I'm hanging out about 13, 15 feet, just going around the weed lines here. So, well, hey, that's going to do it for this edition of Shane Flynn Outdoors. I hope this was an informative episode for you. I hope you can get out there, tie on a spinnerbait in the next few weeks if you're in the Virginia area, and catch a lot of big fish in the North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey. Hey, if you're in the Michigan, New Hampshire, I know I've got some fans up there, and the ice is coming off the water, even up in Canada. Hey, this really works. I can tell you, I lived in North Dakota and fished in Minnesota, and the first thing I threw after ice out for bass in Minnesota was the spinnerbait, and I crushed them on it in Minnesota Lake. So it works, and all around the United States. It's just the time of year, the water temperature, the bass want to spawn. And again, I hope you get out there and are very fortunate and catch a big bass on the spinnerbait. Until next time, tight lines and good luck fishing.